In the middle of December 1629, at the peak of a plague epidemic, archers of the mounted police escorted 2 prisoners to the fortress of Villeneuve-lès-Avignon. Prosecuted for counterfeiting, their fate already seemed sealed. And yet, in this case, nothing was ordinary. Jean Frigon, one of the 2 prisoners, also stood accused of grave and unlawful grievances against a 7-year-old girl, Marie Olier. He lived with his wife, Mesaza, in Mesaza in a house he rented. That house, however, belonged to the young orphan. Her guardians had likely rented it out to provide her with an income for her upkeep. 8 months later, the same guardians entrusted the child to the tenant himself, reducing the annual rent on the condition that he feed and shelter her. One night, Marie ran away and took refuge in a neighbor's home. She was immediately put to bed, suffering from what the records call profound physical trauma. Rumors spread quickly through the village. The next day, the judge opened a secret inquiry. Since no one claimed to have seen anything, a search of the house was ordered. And then came the surprise. A pewter ducat was found on the floor. It soon became clear that it was counterfeit. The search intensified. The ground floor was dug up, and investigators uncovered a mold, a spoon, and various tools. The case suddenly took on an entirely new dimension. It now fell under the authority of the provost marshal, who was urgently notified in Villeneuve-lès-Avignon. The 2 men were locked in the fortress jail, in separate cells. What happened next is known from a report written by the provost after Frigon's escape. In passing, the document notes that the prisons had been emptied of their usual guards because of the time of contagion, which is almost universal. The world seemed frozen. Movement had been reduced to a minimum. Frigon was handcuffed and shackled at the feet. An archer from Villeneuve, named Olier, was placed in charge of guarding the prisoners and distributing food. The following day, the city's royal magistrate, Estienne Lagarde, was informed. The archer Olier had been rendered forever silent, and Frigon had escaped. Using the iron bar that linked his leg irons, he administered a permanent stunning to his guard. In the cell, the remains of his last meal were still there. Soup, walnuts, bread, and wine. Olier's form was still warm. It was January 3, 1630. Soldiers were immediately sent into the surrounding countryside, and also to Mesaza, where Frigon would be seen a few days later heading toward a large wood, before vanishing without a trace. His accomplice remained behind. 2 townsmen, father and son named Sobouls, were appointed as guards. But the very next morning, the magistrate was alerted once again. Another sudden departure in the jail. As on the previous day, he went to the scene with local notables to record the findings. This time, he found that the prisoner had reached a self-initiated finality in his cell. The examination showed that he had used a small, sharp fragment, about 4 fingers long and a thumb wide, to conclude his own journey. The Sobouls declared that around midnight they had heard him speaking aloud. When questioned, he answered that he was praying to God and to the Virgin Mary. Within a matter of weeks, a case of counterfeiting had turned into a chain of tragedies: unmentionable transgressions, clandestine minting, the final silencing of a royal officer, an escape in the midst of plague, and a voluntary end in prison. Through this file, we glimpse both the fragility of institutions in a time of contagion and the harshness of a society in which swift and implacable justice could, at times, be overwhelmed by the chaos of circumstance.